Roll call. Oh, Mr. Beck.
Here.
Ms. Lees. Here. There, I got it now. Okay, move approval of the agenda.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. Beck.
Aye.
Ms. Lees. Aye. Old business, we don't have any. New business, Mead House renovation discussion. Hello.
Hello.
How you doing? Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll give you the extras.
Okay,
for
thanks.
food. Two more for Federal Security for a long time. And Symmes Township. Right. 12 years.
Hi, how you doing? Did anybody else join?
Not yet, you're first.
Okay. All right. We're gonna go ahead? Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Hello.
My name is Brian Albrecht. I'm with Prodigy Building Solutions.
Okay, sorry.
So we put together a very preliminary report of a couple options that were requested for the Mead House. The various options include basic structural shoring of the property. There's some leaking based on an engineer's report that was done previously. There's a lot of sagging of the first floor. There's some structural issues as well as some water mitigation that needs to be done there. So the first option would basically be to keep the house essentially as it is, but just shore it up, prevent those leaks, and keep the building standing essentially as it is. There wouldn't be any additional uses or anything like that, but that would be option one, which we'll get into the more specifics here in a second. Option two would be to fully renovate the building and convert it to assembly use. There was some idea of using it as a gathering space, be it for wedding receptions or something like that. Converting it to that would be a much more substantial renovation. So that would be the second option. The third option being a full renovation and conversion to office use so that the township could use it as office space for whatever purposes that they see fit there. And then the fourth option would be removal of the entire structure and then building a new assembly space on that same site for wedding venue use and other uses there. So the first option being the structural shoring and water mitigation. We're just looking to extend the life of the building, so new steel columns and beams would be installed to prevent any further deflection for the main level floor system. We would need to excavate around the entire building to expose the stone foundation. A lot of that stone foundation is crumbling. Just over the years, the mortar joints have been compromised and really need new tuck pointing done to it. The extent to that, we can't really tell until we excavate how much of that really needs to be done. So in terms of providing the cost, we need to assume high on that as opposed to what we can just see. There's also the new fluid applied moisture barrier applied to the exterior of the foundation that would prevent any further moisture intrusion in the future. And while the building is actually excavated all the way around, it makes sense to install new drain tile, which helps prevent moisture from building up around the building in the first place. There are a couple other options that we can look into along the way, but those are kind of the main pieces of that renovation, just getting everything back to the way it needs to be. This would not include leveling out the first floor or shoring up anything below essentially the foundation level for that option. And the estimated cost of work for that is roughly $225,000. Okay. Any questions on that option? The second option would be the full renovation and conversion to the assembly use. So we're doing everything that would be proposed in option one, as well as renovating the rest of the home to accommodate for events. So the engineer's report that was submitted before offered up some potential floor plans for that assembly use. So we use that kind of as a basis of design, which walls would be removed and what new spaces would need to be added. A few new spaces that would need to be added on the second floor that would be used as a changing space for bride and groom and the bridal parties up there. So an extra bathroom would need to be created there. So you would have some additional plumbing work, additional HVAC rework to get HVAC into those new spaces, as well as everything that comes with essentially a new bathroom up there. Thankfully, because of the size of the space, we don't have to meet ADA access to that second floor, so there's no elevator requirement or anything like that in terms of egress purposes for that space. But when we go to do that major renovation, there's a lot of what ifs and a lot of unknowns with a building of this age. When we start to level out those floor systems that are sagging right now and kind of deflecting, as soon as we start to level those out, they are all plaster walls. Everything is going to move with it. You're going to get a lot of cracking. You're going to get a lot of movement and shifting along with it. And the extent to which things need to be repaired and essentially torn out and redone will all come with when we move all of that stuff back into place. So it's kind of an assumption right now of how much of that would need to be done. But the extent of work that needs to be completed for that would be very extensive, including refinishing hardwood floors. The kitchenette would, the entire kitchen would be removed, a new kitchenette put in place for catering services, walls removed. The electrical system would need to be upgraded to a commercial assembly use level, which I believe the engineers report, when they figured cost in, they did not include upgrading all of that. They have roughly $11,000 in there for all of the electrical work on the house. But if you're creating new spaces, if you're eliminating walls, all of that's going to need to be reworked. And the current panel box is also in a location that's not suited for the structural shoring that would need to be done in the basement. So the panel would need to be moved as well. So that $11,000 probably doesn't get you quite to where you need to be for all the electrical work that would need to be done there.
So are these estimates, I know they're estimates, are they like low estimates, or are they like on the, if you're estimating higher?
I would say we're in the mid to higher
Mid to
range.
high, right.
We tried to include as much as possible, but we don't want to assume the absolute worst case scenario because the odds of the worst case scenario are fairly low. We want to give you a general realistic idea of what this might be.
Okay.
So could there be some surprises along the way that exceed the budget here? Sure, that's to be the case with any sort of 100-year-old facility. That's just the nature of the beast. We don't know what we don't know. And especially in a residential situation like that, I have a decent amount of experience in residential, and I can tell you along the way somebody probably DIY'd themselves something, and to what extent that needs to be fixed and renovated, it kind of remains to be seen until we get into it.
Okay.
So that's a general overview of option 2. Option 3 is very similar. A lot of the same issues need to be addressed there. The only basic kind of benefit to option 3 over option 2 would be the assembly use needs to include 16 additional parking spaces based on the amount of square footage that is currently in the house. So as soon as you switch to A2 use, we would have to add some parking spaces there. For office use, we wouldn't have to do that, but most of the things that would need to be done for the assembly use would need to be done for the office use. You're just eliminating the added bathroom on the second floor. The kitchen wouldn't need to be as extensive of a remodel. The elimination of some of the walls on the first floor, that could probably stay and just create new office spaces along there. So the difference in price there is essentially the added bathroom and the kitchen component, which is what creates that basically $200,000 difference between options 2 and 3. Option 4 is the removal of the existing building and a completely new construction. With the size of the space, from discussions that we've had, it didn't seem like you guys were looking for a large assembly space, but something that a smaller gathering could utilize. So we've assumed 1,500 square feet. That would include the kitchen space, a changing facility, and restrooms for the changing facility, as well as the assembly space would be an additional 1,500 square foot banquet hall, all on one floor, so it's all meets ADA accessibility. We would try to utilize some of the historic components of the Mead House within the design, try to salvage some of maybe the large columns out front and things like that and incorporate that.
You couldn't leave the face of it
The face of the
intact?
building?
Yes, and just do the back?
Potentially, but you're also looking at a lot of tie-ins, a lot of kind of design iterations. You would be pretty close to essentially the same cost of the new building in terms of the old. Just because you're trying to match a lot of the details that are there, and those details 100 years ago, that was standard. Today, those are more expensive details to get into. So you're probably still looking at a similar cost point for a new building. The other question would be, would you be looking to do a 2-story building just like it is now? Or would you just do a vaulted open space that has the 2-story look on the front? The single-story space would be easier to navigate for new use and everything in terms of accessibility and all of that.
Okay.
So that's the general overview.
Do you recall the square footage of the existing?
The existing,
approximately?
Yeah, the existing building is actually 2,334 square feet on 2 floors. So little over 1,100 square feet per floor.
You said 23,
2334.
34, okay. Per floor.
Which is just
Total.
Yeah,
Total.
a little
Okay.
over 1,100 square feet per floor.
Okay.
So do you guys have a recommendation?
Personally, I think it's a great old building. Unfortunately, I think you're going to have a lot of maintenance included. Even if going with option 1, that does not prevent future maintenance costs and everything that come with an old structure like that. The plaster usually has a roughly 100-ish year lifespan. And sometimes shorter than that depending on how it was done, so it starts to release and then it starts to crack and deteriorate. You're getting to that point and there's some signs of that within the building itself. So as soon as the plaster starts to go, the entire inside all would have to be kind of gutted and redone anyway. So the question becomes, are you investing the money in just keeping the building as it is, or do you want it to become something, at which point I would say keeping it as an R2 use type residential doesn't benefit you guys really at all. So if you're going to do something, I would lean towards options 2, 3, or 4 as opposed to option 1. It just depends on what you guys would benefit the most from, whether it's office space, like if you're in dire need of it, you could gain 4 or 5 office spaces there, or if it would benefit the community the most to have an assembly space. I would lean towards more a new building personally, just because of the reduced maintenance costs that come with that, as well as the benefit of redesigning the space, which the current space wasn't set up for that, so you're going to have some issues there. There's some bearing points and everything that would kind of chop the space up a little more than you would like for a assembly gathering space.
So option 1, we couldn't, I mean, you can fix it up, but it's like you can't have a party in option 1. Okay.
Yeah, it's not zoned for it. Since it's just a residential space, you're not allowed to have any sort of public events there.
Okay. So you really, the only thing option 1 is just to get it up to date and sit there.
Correct. Yeah, and it's not even necessarily bringing it all up to date in terms of the first and second floor. It would just be to short up, keep things from sagging, and additionally stop the water from getting in to the basement that's currently happening quite a bit. So it would stop the deterioration of the substructure.
Yeah. So I personally would think an office use would not be good for that, because I think you know, we have office here, we bought some property, maybe to put in a new office. I just think that would be wasted space for that building itself. So there would be option 2 for me or option 4 for me, depending on, I don't know. We have to think about that. Because it's a historical piece of property, but we don't want it to sit empty, so we have to do something with it. And if it's gonna have all these hidden costs that we don't know, I mean, we could potentially get in there and it could cost us 2 million, 3 million. And then the upkeep itself on an older building is gonna be a lot more expensive. But then I see the other hand, it's part of Symmes Township, it's historical, so I don't, it's like, there's 2 sides to this, so I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I know in the past we talked about with the existing building, we've actually rented it out as sort of pseudo office space. But I think it's kind of a peculiar setup. The fact that you're in a park and, yeah,
And
You're kind
offices
of-
aren't really going well these days.
that too, and it's just really not set up to operate that way. I mean, it would be interesting just to know what would a revenue projection be if we invested and renovated and then basically leased it as office, as commercial office. I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out what a potential revenue projection might be, just for conversation's sake, find out, you know, how long would it take to get a return on investment. But I know we've always, for the most part, had in mind more of an assembly type of setup. I know we've toyed in the past with, you know, when we were talking to the prior architect, the historical usage architect, about the fact that you can't, because as you say, it's a confining structure, so you can do sort of supporting roles in that structure. You can't really have that being the main attraction. And then we talked about, well, maybe we could build a barn in the back, and that would be like the main event location.
Your reception hall, essentially in the back.
Yeah, people would
Hi, Joe, how are you?
prepare for that event in the house and then move into the barn for the,
Correct.
you know, the big
Yep.
ceremony. I've got kind of a similar question with that. I mean, do we have any idea if we
Am I
talked
supposed to
with?
hear the presentation?
Well, he already went through the presentation. I don't know.
That was 20 minutes ago, Joe.
Yeah, can you hear any of the stuff that we're talking about now?
A little late.
No.
He's on Florida time.
Yeah, he is. Just got off the beach.
Do we have any idea on revenue projection for?
Yeah, I
Renting
can
it out.
email Joe,
Well,
you the link for the broadcast. You can watch the broadcast live.
Okay. I
That's
do
fine.
know that, like,
Well, I have
Anderson
that,
Township
but my
has a building
computer
that they
tells me
rent
it
out, so we
requires an
probably
update,
could talk to them
and then
and
it
see what kind of revenue they make off of
take the
it.
update. It says try again
Theirs is
later.
a smaller building, and I don't think it would necessarily do like weddings. I think if we do it right, we could, you know, make it nicer than their building. Do you know which building I'm talking about in Anderson
don't.
Township?
Mm-mm. What do they use it for? Do you know? What kind
Just
of
parties,
events?
like,
Smaller.
I was there for like a 40th birthday party, and then Anderson Township, they have a piece of property that they have a building that they rent. It's a pretty nice building too. I mean, they did a nice job with it.
Is it new?
No, I would say it's probably about 20, 25 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. So we could probably ask them what they make off of it per year. I know that a lot of people like our parks and they rent those shelters.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, would there be like wedding planners or party planners in the area that might be able to help us project out? I mean, is this something that would get used once a month
I
for
would-
X number of dollars, or every weekend for X number of dollars?
I would say that I've talked to certain people and they would want to be the representative, like the wedding planner for the township that would organize the
Promote it.
wedding. Yeah. And maybe, I don't know if we could work a deal with them that they pay so much per year or whatever. And then we promote it or do whatever. Yeah.
There's several facilities around that are probably very similar. So French Park has one, which you see is Cincinnati.
Oh, and they're booked out like
Right.
years.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know, it's got Green Acres Farms that have
Yes.
beautiful, and they're every weekend from like beginning of May till October. They book every.
Right.
I also think if this is done correctly, the flexibility of having the park space, so if you wanted the outdoor wedding venue, you have that option, but also having the indoor space, so if it does rain, you're flexible.
Right.
Those kind of spaces are tougher to find. And I know whenever somebody books an outdoor wedding, there's always that concern of what do we do if it rains.
Right.
So
I'm sorry, what was the park you mentioned, the Cincinnati Park?
French
Good
Park.
French.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have kind of a temporary structure. They used to just use tents, but they have temporary kind of permanent structures
Yeah.
that they are able to move things inside. But
They knew that the castle kind of looking thing, that
Yeah.
outdoor. Yeah, I've been to a wedding there. It's beautiful. Mhm. Yeah. So this is something thought for process. Thought. I got to think about it.
We definitely need to think about it. I mean, we've got to make the right decision. I'd be kind of interested in finding out what our finance committee, would have to say about this, if they have any knee-jerk reactions.
So I started putting feelers out there to people asking about it because, it's on my side of town and everyone that, likes Mead and goes to Mead.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if it's done right, and I think they understand what comes along with an old building. So I don't want to speak for everybody, but I think for the majority of people, they would understand if we could not maintain the old building.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the,
It would just be heartbreaking taking it down.
heartbreaking. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't know if we can do it, but
And like I said, in terms of design, there are ways to utilize plenty of the aesthetic pieces of the building and try to keep, the character alive in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I wonder if we could get some sketches of what could it look like.
I think we'd have to provide some input first.
Okay.
What we're looking for and what capacity.
and that's
And-
something that we could easily sit down and discuss. We could provide some preliminary design options and stuff like that when it comes to going through that. But it's just a matter of what you guys are after in the
Mhm.
space.
Mm-hmm. It would probably be helpful for us to visit some of these other venues,
Right.
just to get some ideas. I remember when we were getting the pollinator seeds and we went to the Hamilton County Park on the west side of the county, went into that old barn.
Oh my God, that was a
That was
beautiful barn.
cool.
If they would take that barn apart and put it somewhere else, they could
Yeah,
have some weddings.
it was beautiful.
It was beautiful. It could have been, yeah, could be really, they don't think that progressive. Yeah. Okay, so I guess what we'll have to do is think about it, put it out to the finance committee, explain to them what we're trying to do. Joe, do you have any comments?
Hey, Joe, do you have any comments about the Mead House?
Well, I can't hear what you guys are saying there. It's
Oh.
all jumbled and obscure. But if the recommendation is that it's more practical financially, tear down the existing structure and build a new one, I'm all in favor of that. I think it's a waste of money, at least the money that was quoted last meeting I was involved in. It doesn't make sense to pour that much money into a building that would still be inadequate after all those changes are done. It's still an inadequate building for the purposes we want it for. I think if we can make it look, the facade look, the way the Mead House looks now, and preserve that historical aspect of it, I'm all in favor of that. I am not in favor of spending all that money to redo a old structure that still isn't going to end up being what we want it to be, even after pouring all that money into it. That's where I stand.
Mm-hmm.
Paying for it? How to pay for it?
What?
Have you thought about how to pay for it?
Not yet. We'd probably have to put our finance caps on.
Yeah.
So I spent 33 years at the Third Security doing financing of these kinds of projects. So certainly anything I could do to help. I've looked at some of the cost of doing that, you know, your debt limits, your availability to borrowing, if you looked at borrowing, that kind of stuff. So as you get to the finance committee, I'm pretty far through that if I can help with anything.
Okay. Okay.
I think the other thing I want to say, so.
Do you want to step up?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
No, I
It's
was
just-
sorry, Bob.
Hi, Bob.
No, what I was gonna say is if you guys can help us with capacity too, because I was hearing you talk about these Front Park and, you know, the Green Acres. Because I asked, like on the sidebar, how many could we hold in this, and the answer was about 150 people. So if we want to get to the size of, you know, the other facilities, I think it would help if you guys gave us direction on how many people you'd want to hold, what your vision of it is, because it may change the scope. Then, so Brian can absolutely do a 3D rendering for you of what this will look like. It's what he does. So no big deal, and we can incorporate some of the structures. So anyway, cool.
Yeah, I
But
think that's.
give us direction, we'll make it happen.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, so you're saying the existing
And
facility
since
would
I
be about
can't hear
150
anything that's going
capacity?
on, I'm going to hang up. If
If
there's more information,
More than
certainly
doubling
call me. I
that.
have my cell phone with
We
me.
would probably want
Okay.
something, I would think, of just about
Okay,
100, 150.
thanks.
Nothing too big,
Yeah,
something, but nothing too small.
Yeah.
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 But I mean, then we can help you, you know, get whatever you guys projected at, and then that'll assist you in your revenue projections, et cetera. So, cool.
So this option 4, what, I see you're providing 1,500 square foot. Are you stacking a banquet hall
This would all
with
be
the
one
kitchen?
floor.
It'd all be on one floor, okay.
Yeah, just for ease of accessibility purposes, you know, wheelchair access and everything. At a certain point, it makes more sense to put it all on one floor as opposed to stacking it like it currently is. The stacking, my first thought goes to the bride's getting ready, but grandma's in a wheelchair and she's upstairs. You gotta essentially carry
Right.
grandma off the stairs to get in there.
So-
Those kind of situations.
So if you do it all on one floor, how much bigger would the building be versus what's there now?
Right now, it's about 1,100 square feet on the first floor, so you're looking about 3 times the footprint that's there. So it's substantially bigger, but I think we could probably incorporate some open outdoor space to that as well, so it wouldn't seem quite so massive.
Okay, yeah, I like that idea.
And then is this capacity the 150?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, so to second, I don't know what the gentleman on the computer's name was. Sorry.
Oh, Joe.
Joe,
Fiscal
he's our
officer.
finance officer. Yeah.
So, Joe, we just did renovation work to a Lemming House over in Miami Township. They have a historic building and banquet hall there. And I'll kind of second what he's saying. The amount of work, like, to get those buildings up to speed and what you need to do to keep them renovated correctly is quite expensive over time. So, I understand it's sad to see those things go, 'cause I get it, I like history, you know, so, but I think we can help incorporate things that Brian was saying to make that better for you. But that'll take some planning and we'll figure it out. There's so much foundation work that needs to be done to those older buildings. They just start sinking, and then you need to jack them up. You need to do all kinds of, it's just an incredible amount of work. So, all right.
Okay.
Thanks. Any questions for me? Sorry, I was just, I can kind of, okay, I'll leave it alone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate the way you've got
Yeah.
this organized. It's helpful, it's easy to understand. We've got some homework to do, I think.
Yes, we do. Yes. So, thank you. You don't have to stay, y'all. I mean,
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you. You too.
okay, so we're moving on. We're going to discuss park fees, rules, regulation change discussion.
Okay, so we've had a lot. I mean, even though we increased the fees last year, $50, we still have had an incredible year for rentals. But we need to increase the deposit. We have a lot of people that still don't follow the rules, and we've had to fix a lot of things. So the $100 just doesn't cut it.
The deposit.
So I'm wondering if we could raise it to $250 and then increase the non-resident rate to $50, additional $50. And that way it'll kind of give,
How much is it now?
it's a $50 difference between resident and non-resident.
But how much is the rental fee?
It varies from,
Right.
let's see, 140 up to 250 for the different sizes.
So if we leave the rate alone and just have a bigger deposit, 150 deposit?
It's still not enough to cover the damages though.
Really, what are they doing?
They're bringing in those big pots and they're cooking and putting wood and like lighting it on fire and like damaging the concrete that's on the pad. And so, I mean, we bill the people, but I'd just really like to just have that deposit up so that I don't have to try to chase them down and bill the people for the damages that they're doing. And a lot of times they just don't even care. Like $100 is nothing for them to just give it up and break the rules.
So
Well, what
they're
are
putting,
they-
it's a wood burning fire pit or something?
Yeah, that's what they're doing, and they're doing it underneath the shelter. So I mean, these wood structures, it's really dangerous to do what they're doing. But like I said, the $100 is nothing to a lot of these people, and they just don't care about it.
And so do they sign saying they won't use that?
Yeah.
And they do anyway?
They do it all the time, every day.
What are they cooking?
I don't know. It's just not people that are not from this country. It's usually other people, and they're making food for large amounts of people. And then they're stuffing the shelters, the overcapacity, which is probably a fire code issue, but, and then we have that to clean up too. But anyway, I just was hoping that we could increase the deposit and then increase the non-resident rate to try to curb some of that from happening. And then we would also need to add, I was hoping to increase the athletic field fee from $12 to $15. And then we need to put in a requirement for lighting. We do not have that anywhere in our rules. And we actually had a baseball team that used the lights 10 or 12 times this past year, and they didn't pay the bill. And then I can't go after them because it's not in the rules.
Was it a baseball team?
Yeah.
Is it our baseball?
No, it wasn't one of the recreational teams. It's a select team. But the person is a resident. I've sent them 3 or 4 notices now, and they don't pay the bill. So, and I can't do anything about it because it's not in the rules.
So $30 per night will take
Yep.
care of that?
Okay.
Okay.
That's fine
That
with
seems
that.
reasonable. And the 12 to 15,
Yeah, and I copied like all our costs, at least that we're paying out of the park fund, like all the different people that we pay for maintenance and all the contracted services, so you can see like all the costs.
That's the appropriation ledger.
Yeah,
Do you know how much Loveland charges for their fields per person?
it varies every year because the way Dave does it is he has a budget that he goes by, and then whatever the costs are over and above that budget, that's what he charges the athletic teams, and they have to make up the difference.
So can we get an idea of what they're charging the athletic?
Recordings.
It's different every year.
So 1 year it could be $5, next year it could be 20.
Oh no, it's thousands of dollars.
I know, but you don't know what it's per person.
I don't think they do it that way. I think they charge the teams themselves,
And then the teams put it on to the,
or they just pay it.
well, I'm sure.
Say like the difference is $10,000. He'll tell football, here's your portion. He'll tell baseball, here's your portion, and then soccer, here's your portion, and then they have to pay that $10,000. But ours, ours is so,
Low.
yeah, we don't even come close to capturing all the costs that we put into it.
Okay.
So just to be clear, so we're keeping the resident fee the same?
Yeah, I would keep the resident fee the same and
Okay.
increase the non-resident fee, because we have a lot of people that come from out of town to use our shelters, surprisingly.
Because we have beautiful parks.
Yeah, well, I think it's word of mouth, and somebody comes here for a party and they see it and then they want to come, and we have a lot of people from Hamilton Township that come to use it. We have a lot of people from Mason, people from Montgomery. They're coming from all over to use it.
Yeah.
Okay. That seems reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll put it on the agenda for Tuesday? All right.
That's all I
Is
got.
that all we need to discuss? Okay. So there's no executive session, so I move to adjourn.
Second?
Roll call?
Miss Lees?
Aye.
Mr. Beck?
Aye. Thank you.